You're listening to the Christian Healthy Lifestyle Podcast.
I was not impressed by the medical establishment and what they had to offer. There was very, very little that they could do for me. And they wanted, they always just want to prescribe you things. So, prescribing you medicine for pain, which for the kind of pain that I had, this is how wild it was. I mean, they would give me oxy or morphine, these type of heavy duty painkillers. And I'm not kidding you, they didn't even make a dent. And my life was on the line. And when I stumbled upon the hydrogen information, I literally thought it was a scam. It was way too good to be true. It was so unbelievable that I thought this can't possibly be true. Even if you could try hydrogen, where in the world do you get hydrogen? I mean, I can't go to the corner drugstore and buy hydrogen.
Pick up some hydrogen.
And what exact type of hydrogen are we talking about here? And what levels and what implementation? I had so many questions. And there was no YouTube videos about it. Nobody was talking about it back then. And it's one of the reasons I created my YouTube channel, because I just gathered so much information and put so much effort and saw the miracle of hydrogen that I just knew that I had to share with the world.
Hey, Dave Sandstrom here. I'm starting something new and I need your help. I'm going to be doing lifestyle audit episodes. Would you like to be on the show with me? You tell me what your pain point is and I'll offer my advice. There's no charge. You'll be helping me create some great content for the show. When you're done listening to this episode, go to christianhealthylifestyle.com/audit, answer a few questions, and you'll be good to go. I look forward to hearing from you. Today we have on the show Greg the Hydrogen Man. Greg is an authority on the use of hydrogen as a therapeutic to enhance health and well-being. This guy has done his homework, and I think you're going to be blown away at what he has to say. Greg, welcome to Christian Healthy Lifestyle.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking with you. I'm a student here with this hydrogen stuff. I'm relatively new to the idea, but it has some amazing implications. And you, I know, are a real authority on this subject. So, just real quick, can you just tell the Natural Nation, the listening audience, what is molecular hydrogen?
I think the simplest way to describe it, it's actually like oxygen. Oxygen is a gas. Hydrogen or molecular hydrogen is just a gas. It's just a different type of gas. That's, I think, the simplest way that I would put it.
Okay. All right. Very good. So what led you to discover this as a therapeutic for health and wellness?
Something absolutely horrible. It was my health literally took a dive, and I had so many medical issues, and technically I shouldn't even probably even be alive any longer. I was an absolute mess. I didn't just have one issue. I had so many that having to try to remember them all, sometimes I literally forget at this point, because I did have a heart condition. So that was supposed to, my cardiologist said, you'd be lucky to have another 10 years. My liver and my kidneys were definitely not optimal. So they weren't working as good as they really should. Mm-hmm. I had inflammation throughout my body that was so severe. One, I literally couldn't work a remote control. That's how silly it was. Wow. And I also couldn't walk for very, very long periods of time. Like I would go 6 months without the ability to walk. I was completely bedridden. And it wasn't just the inability to walk as much as it was the excruciating pain that came with the inability to walk. It literally felt like there was a sledgehammer taken in my back, and all my joints hurt just literally super bad. And then I had a lot of gut issues and autoimmune, and my immune system was an absolute garbage. I mean, my immune system was horrible. I would really get sick at the drop of a hat, and I just couldn't recover from the common cold. It would take me month and a half, and sometimes I would get sick all over again within a week and go through it all over again. And then I actually was having bone loss on top of it all, which seemed to have something going on in regards to the autoimmune issue. Needless to say, I just had a lot of issues. I also had some tumors in my body, so that was pretty wild. And just all over, random places, kind of like in joints between fingers, one of my eyeballs, my back, my shoulder. I mean, needless to say, my body was suffering, and I was suffering with it, and it just destroyed my life. I literally lost everything. So that's kind of how I started researching about trying to figure out how to improve my health.
So I'm guessing you probably saw several practitioners, right? You probably went, what most people would do, go see a doctor, right? Go see a specialist of some sort, maybe a neurologist. Was that your experience? Did you go through several practitioners before you said, hey, I guess I'm just going to have to figure this out on my own?
Yeah, I specialized in the medical field for about 2 decades, maybe a little more. So I worked with numerous specialists, numerous doctors. I knew the field quite well in and out, and I really had a deep look into what was going on behind the scenes, which to be
Mm.
honest was kind of creepy because I realized in the first decade of doing my work, that I wasn't impressed. Let's put it that way. I was not impressed by the medical establishment and what they had to offer. And that's when I realized, boy, I hope I never get sick. And then of course it ended up happening to me. And yes,
Wow.
I did go see numerous doctors, and it really didn't lead almost anywhere. There
Yeah.
was very, very little that they could do for me. And they wanted, they always just want to prescribe you things. So, prescribing you medicine for pain, which for the kind of pain that I had, this is how wild it was. I mean, they would give me oxy or morphine, these type of heavy duty painkillers. And I'm not kidding you. They didn't even like make a dent. Like I was still in
Wow.
excruciating pain. They didn't do anything. In fact,
Wow.
some of them made me really sick. So I would shake, I would get clammy and sweaty, and I just couldn't take those drugs. And I'm like, I can't live like this. What am I supposed to take painkillers for the rest of my life, which really don't work? It was horrible. It was a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible experience.
Wow. So you're recovered. You
Yes.
look great. You sound great. Okay. So I'm assuming you used hydrogen therapy as part of your recovery, but that wasn't all you did, right?
That's right. Yeah, I just started trying to learn. I'm actually really, I have a lot of weaknesses, just being completely blunt and honest here. I have a lot of weaknesses and I have very few strengths, but the very few strengths that I have tend to be like extremely strong. So I'm very lopsided. And when I get interested in something, I'm like a pit bull. I just grab on and I don't let go. And my life was on the line. And so the way that this all really happened, it's funny because I was trying to read medical data, new scientific, information, anything that I could use to try to improve my health. And the thing is, it was really hard to read that kind of literature. I mean, if you've ever tried to read, I mean, pages and pages, and it's so utterly boring. And
Right.
there's a lot of terminology that's extremely boring. And
Mm.
so I had a really low point, which is when I was actually trying to work a remote control to watch TV because I couldn't walk and I couldn't do it. It hurt that bad. And I made a prayer. I mean, I literally just broke. I absolutely hit rock bottom, and I had already lost my home by that time, and I had already lost my job. I lost everything. You can't walk, you can't do much.
Right.
And so anyway, I just made a prayer, and I remember praying. I still remember that moment because I was like, God, if you can just guide me and help me figure out how to improve my health, my body, overcome these issues that I have. And I just somehow felt it inside of me. I'm like, I just know that if you can lead me and show me that this information most likely will be able to help others. And I promise you that I will help others if I'm able to find my way. And that's exactly what I've done.
Hmm. And how long was your recovery? How long did it take you?
It took years. First, because I started with certain things. I was looking at my diet. I was looking at the kind of water I was drinking. I was looking at just different types of technology, and I had stumbled upon hydrogen. And this was many years ago when almost nobody really knew about it. So there wasn't a ton of studies yet. But when I started reading about it, the first thing that I thought, for people who don't know me, I'm a little bit of a skeptic, especially when it comes to all this health stuff, because everybody like disagrees on everything. Like you could literally watch one podcast where they say, oh, you should drink alkaline water. And somebody says, no, spring water. And somebody says, no, distilled water. No, like nobody can agree. Same thing with diet. Somebody says you should eat nothing but meat. Somebody says, no, nothing but vegetables. And like nobody can agree on these things. So that was very frustrating. So I started trying to look at the scientific, data and really look at good information rather than opinions. And when I stumbled upon the hydrogen information, I literally thought it was a scam. It was way too good to be true. It was so unbelievable that I thought this can't possibly be true. And I literally read the data for almost 4 years, roughly, before I ever even thought about trying it because I felt like it was so complex as far as like, even if you could try hydrogen, where in the world do you get hydrogen? I mean, I can't go to the corner drugstore and buy hydrogen.
Pick up some hydrogen.
And what exact type of hydrogen are we talking about here? And what levels and what implementation? I had so many questions. And there was no YouTube videos about it. Nobody was talking about it back then. And it's one of the reasons I created my YouTube channel, because I just gathered so much information and put so much effort and saw the miracle of hydrogen that I just knew that I had to share with the world.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, your YouTube channel is pretty awesome. What's your handle for YouTube?
Uprising 144K.
Yeah, I was on there and I watched a few videos, and it's pretty. You got some great information there. And neither Greg nor myself are medical doctors. We don't give medical advice, but you do talk there about how effective hydrogen therapy can be for things like Alzheimer's and dementia. Uh, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and just as you said, I don't give any medical advice. I don't make any
Yeah,
medical claims. I don't do any of this.
right,
But there's a lot of scientific evidence, and I have, as far as dementia and Alzheimer's, in the medical establishment, they really have no answer for it. I mean, that's the honest to God truth.
right.
I know they have
They
some
just they
very
just blame
expensive.
they blame it on your genetics. They say it's probably
Oh
on
my
running
gosh.
your family. I mean, if it wasn't your parents or grandparents, you probably had a great great grandfather somewhere that had it. So you inherited that gene. Unlucky you. That's basically what they'll tell you.
And if you look at the latest evidence, that doesn't really actually look to be correct, but they always try to blame that. And they don't, what they don't talk about is things that activate certain genetic patterns that we are potentially predispositioned to.
Right.
So you make a long story short, probably the biggest Alzheimer's story or testimonial. I have a video on it with the pictures. There was literally a woman whose mother has, dementia, Alzheimer's, and her mother literally wouldn't recognize her daughter anymore. And it was so
Mm.
sad. And she found my channel. She literally made the hydrogen exactly how I personally do it or personally recommend, which there's different ways to make it. And in my opinion, you do not want to do it the wrong way. It can be pretty bad. And so she did it the right way. And she
Mhm.
started using it on her mother. And apparently the results were so dramatic. She started taking pictures of her. And you could literally see the difference. I posted the images and the pictures of her mother. And I remember when she emailed me because she said, I am so blown away. Is this normal? She thought maybe there was just some type of like anomaly or something. She said, is this normal? Because now my mother recognizes me. Now she knows the people around her. It was so life changing. And,
Mm.
I really believe in feeding the spirit. I know that we can learn how to feed the body, and that's one aspect. But I think that a lot of people in this day and age, like you could have the money, you can have the cars, you can have even your health, but you somehow feel empty inside. I think a lot of people feel empty inside these days, hence the reason so many people are antidepressants and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I meditated on it a lot. And what I realized is I need to just feed my spirit also, not just my body. And I realized that the way you feed your spirit, at least in my opinion, is by doing good to others, being, loving one another, just like literally like Jesus said. And
Hmm.
so that's what I did. And just that one testimony, there's so many. In fact, the company who carries a device that I like because it is the best, it's literally the number one machine in all of Japan to produce your own hydrogen. They have an interesting story too, because there was a woman who had TBI. So another brain condition, not quite like Alzheimer's dementia, but TBI is traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
And it completely ruined her life. And it was a very touching story because she reached out to me, and I have a hard time saying no to anybody. So I try to help everybody who reaches out, even though it overwhelms me sometimes. Um, and I spent a lot of time with her because she would literally forget almost everything that I was saying every 10, 20, 30 seconds. And it was so hard to work with her, but I did my best. And I remember receiving a call from her about 6 or 8 months after we had initially spoken, and she got all set up on the hydrogen thing. And when she called me, I didn't recognize her because she would speak differently. Before, she would stop and forget, and it was very hard to keep a conversation flowing.
Hmm.
And she called me and she said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, thank you for saving my life." And I was thinking, who is this?
Who
And
is this guy?
it's just, who is this lady? And honestly, I was thinking, not only who is this, I don't believe that I've saved your life. I don't think I don't remember saving anybody's life. I didn't jump into a river and save somebody from drowning or anything. And she said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And the more we spoke, I realized who it was. And then I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my God." But I was kind of like, I didn't think I saved your life. I was just trying to help you. She said, "What you don't know is that I was going to take my life. My life was absolutely ruined from this TBI. I had seen so many doctors, tried so many things, and nothing worked." And she said, and I prayed, kind of like what I did. She prayed also. And she said that in 24 hours or less, a video of mine popped up somewhere. I think it was on YouTube. And she said, I just felt it in my heart and my soul that you were speaking the truth. And so I decided to follow it. And she said, and now I am eternally better. She's like, I'm like 90% better, something that no doctor could ever do for me. And she ended up doing an interview. If people like literally want to see her and see her speak about it, the company
Hmm.
has their own YouTube channel called Holy Hydrogen, which it's interesting, right? Holy hydrogen. We could probably go into why this molecule appears to possibly be holy and special.
Mhm.
But they did an interview with their. I don't do interviews on my channel because I just don't. I actually don't even know how. I just make really quick videos providing information. But they did an interview with her, and it's a pretty amazing story. And there's so many of them. It's really something pretty miraculous.
That's really great. It's remarkable. I the reason why I wanted to ask you about that and start off there is my dad died at 87 from Alzheimer's, and my mom died at 91 with pretty severe dementia. And
Oh,
when you have loved ones that are going through that, it's hard. It's really hard to see them decline because you really lose yourself with those conditions. You don't remember your family, you don't remember who you are, what year it is. It's sad. It's sad to watch, to be around that. And if there's something that can stave off that kind of a condition, man, I want to learn about it. I want to know something about it. So
yes.
Greg? What is the mechanism with which hydrogen works? Why is it so effective at so many different conditions?
The full mechanism, we don't actually know yet. We've learned some things. I mean, we've learned that hydrogen appears to function as an anti-inflammatory, a selective antioxidant, which I think is really important. I wish I had an image for you. A lot of people hear the word antioxidant, they might think, well, isn't that in fruits and vegetables or certain foods? And what
Mm.
I didn't realize until I did further research is that antioxidants actually come in different sizes. And so if you were to look at vitamin E, for people who are seeing, would maybe be this size, and then vitamin C and like CoQ10 and glutathione, they're all different sizes. And
Okay.
if you compare them to hydrogen, hydrogen is like literally like a grain of sand compared to a big boulder. It is so tiny. It literally goes right through glass, right through metal, right through your tissues. In fact, when you use it, it can reach. There is no place in your body that it cannot reach. I even found a Bible verse which eerily sounds like hydrogen. I've actually found a few of them, and I find it quite fascinating. I actually think that it is in Scripture.
What's the
Um,
verse you're thinking about?
there's multiple. I would probably need to pull up my computer. I don't have them memorized. One of them was something like it was like the word of God can penetrate like a double-edged sword, and it said like it can penetrate anything. Like there's no place that it cannot reach. Something along those lines.
Yeah, the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword,
And this is
reaching
what's
the beyond penetrating spirit, mind, and something about the bone marrow. So it penetrates.
yes, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that, right? Because it says that it's alive and active, right? Those are the two words in the scripture. This is what's interesting
Yes.
about it. First of all, hydrogen, they call it active hydrogen. So they literally use the same word. And the reason is because
Hmm.
it's so full of energy and it's super active. And then it says alive, and hydrogen is literally the living molecule. It's life. The reason I say that is, I'll give you an example. In Japan, it's medically approved. So we are talking about something that doesn't just have 10 studies or 20. There's over 2,000 studies. Okay, there's so much data on this now, and beyond a shadow of doubt, it showed that it does what it does. So they medically approved it. And this is how wild it is. You remember the ancient scripture that says life is in the blood, right?
Yes.
So it's Hebrews 4:12.
Okay.
So it says, the word of God is alive and active. So alive, the thing that people don't realize about hydrogen, and this is what I was explaining, is so one of the things that it was approved for is for people who've had strokes. Okay. Now, this is
Yes.
how amazing hydrogen is. This is how I figured out that it's the life molecule. Numerous ways that I figured it out. They all pointed to the same direction, which is, let's say you have a stroke and you're not actually getting proper blood supply to a part of your brain. Okay.
Okay.
Ordinarily, that part of the brain would just die. You don't have a
Right.
lot of time. Okay.
Right.
This is what they do in Japan. They'll send an ambulance and they'll have a hydrogen tank and they'll literally put you on the hydrogen gas. And this is what happens. It literally will keep that part of the brain alive when there's no blood there. I mean, if you can just fathom and just try to understand how
That's amazing.
it's incredible. And so then they get them to the hospital, restore proper blood supply, and basically recovery rate is almost 100%. Like almost everybody makes full recovery. And
Wow.
so when they say that life is in the blood, what I've realized about things that are in the blood, there's a lot of things in the blood, but we have oxygen. That's why they have like oxygen saturation in the blood. But what most
Okay.
people never really realize is that we have hydrogen in the blood. If you don't have hydrogen in the blood, you're not going to be alive. Your body actually produces some hydrogen, and there's certain things that you can do to improve that. But as you age, unfortunately, it appears that your hydrogen production actually goes down, much like your stomach acid production also goes down. A lot of things go down as you're
Right.
aging, different things like, just different stuff. And so when I was reading that verse, so the first thing is it talks about alive and active, right? So that's interesting. Then it says
Yes.
sharper than any double-edged sword. Now, if you
Right.
think about this, hydrogen can literally penetrate and go through anything. I mean, there's nothing that it cannot penetrate. Well, better than a sword. It'll go right through glass. It'll go right through your tissue, anything. So that was kind of interesting, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
it goes, it penetrates even to dividing soul, spirit, joints, and marrow. So literally, hydrogen can make it all the way into the bone marrow. It can make it inside the mitochondria because it is so tiny. So it's so amazing. It really is amazing. And here's where it gets really crazy. Then it says it judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Now, let me show you something. Now, not everybody's going to be able to see this, unfortunately, but I'm going to show this to you because this is so bonkers. And the things that the Japanese do. Have you ever heard of this book?
I certainly have with Erasmus Emoto.
Yes,
He's
Masaru Emoto.
Emoto.
A
He's holding
Japanese
up
guy.
the book called "The Hidden Messages in Water."
Right. So here's the thing that he discovered. Now, everybody thought he was crazy, including myself. See, I'm such a skeptic. I'm like, I need to verify things before I really, preach them or believe in them. When I saw this book showing that if you talk to water, it responds, that if you think thoughts towards water, it responds. We could go on and on. If you put images on water, it responds. And so it just sounded so utterly crazy, right?
Yes.
And everybody thought he was Looney Tunes. And then it took many years before they realized this was actually very legitimate, that this is what was happening.
Yes.
But here's the thing that I think Masaru Emoto missed. I think he missed something really huge. I don't think it's the
Okay.
water that's responding. See, he also said water has memory. That's what they discovered through this whole process. But I don't
Yes.
think it's the water. I think it's the hydrogen within the water, because hydrogen is the majority of water is even made of. And so when it says in this verse,
H2O, right? Yeah.
yep,
Stands
H2.
for hydrogen.
There you go. H2 is molecular hydrogen. Then you got one oxygen. So you're almost 70% hydrogen. So
Okay.
when this verse says that it judges the thoughts and attitudes, of thoughts and attitudes of the heart. So this means if you think something, it responds. Just like water. If you think a thought towards it, it responds.
Hmm.
And so I think hydrogen is the thing that's truly responding, actually, because
Wow.
hydrogen's everywhere. I mean, the sun, remember ancient cultures used to like pray to the sun and all this stuff. The sun is made up
Yeah.
of almost entirely hydrogen.
Right.
And our bodies, we're made of mostly water. Clearly we have a ton of hydrogen. It's
Right.
everywhere. It's part of everything. And I can't imagine anything that seems more like God's spirit to me. In fact, there's another verse that literally says, I don't know if you want me to share it, but
If you have it, sure. I mean, we're a faith-based show. I love Bible
okay,
verses.
well, this one's in Genesis, and this is a wild one because it says, and God's spirit was upon the surface of the waters. Right? Do you remember this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a creation account. I think in Genesis 1.
Yeah, it's literally Genesis, the beginning. And what's the very first thing on the periodic table? Hydrogen, right?
Yes.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. I was researching anything and everything hydrogen, even if it didn't line up with all the medical stuff, which is what I was interested in at first. What I learned was the Japanese noticed an anomaly about hydrogen. When you would fully saturate water with hydrogen, the hydrogen would actually hover and dance upon the surface of the waters.
Wow.
And so I don't know why that verse somehow came to me. Actually, I don't even remember how it all happened because I wasn't really particularly looking for it. And if you look at hydrogen, there's so many things to it that to me seem like, quote unquote, the spirit of God. First of all, it's the most powerful thing there is. Hence the reason that they use it you can use it for energy. You can use it. I mean, look at the sun. Isn't it clearly extremely powerful, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing. The purity of hydrogen. The purity of hydrogen is like, it's most likely the most pure substance known to man. You can literally overdose on just about anything. Water, literally on water. You can drink a couple gallons in 1 hour and it'll kill you.
Right.
And oxygen, people don't realize, oxygen is highly toxic. You don't want too much oxygen. It creates too much
Because our
oxygen.
cells oxidize.
Yes, exactly. Oxygen to me is actually the death molecule. And I believe that life is all a balance about life and death. In fact, I even
Mm.
believe that the tree of knowledge and good and evil, I believe that if we change the words, we could understand it better. It's a tree of knowledge of life and death. Good and evil is life and death, light and darkness. And water, H2O, is literally those two things. It's life, which is hydrogen, and it's oxygen, which is death. And I think that ultimately life is about balance of life and death. But if we go out of balance, which I do believe we are in these days, we are so much imbalance in our bodies and in the world these days. And so that's just
Hmm.
another verse. And so, again, being the most pure substance. And then on top of it all, hydrogen is the ascension molecule. So it literally ascends. So it just keeps pointing to me to like something very spiritual that, in the Bible, when it says, let there be light, for example, I think that's when God created, the stars, our sun, and
Hmm.
I think there's a really strong correlation spiritually, and even Mother Nature. If you look again in Scripture, where the Bible literally says that God created the heavens and the earth, so He clearly created the earth. And so when I was looking for a lot of my medical answers for my issues, I would actually observe nature. I would look at His creation because I find His creation to be just so unbelievable. And so I would observe it. And have you heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France?
I have heard of it. Yes, they have
And so
holy
they
water there.
exactly. And
Yes.
so there were so many people having these crazy healing stories there that literally they sent, like they were documenting these cases and there was tons of them. So they sent scientists to study the water. They're like, there must be something special. And everybody said the same thing. It's just H2O. There's nothing special about it until the Japanese got a hold of it. Because if you were to take a sample of that water and ship it somewhere, all the hydrogen in it would be gone, because that's what the Japanese ultimately discovered, is that that water was rich in hydrogen, or is rich in molecular hydrogen. And so that's how a lot of this got started. And they started doing the studies on animals first. And those are pretty remarkable. So it's
Hmm.
something that apparently God created and put here on earth
Now,
for us.
I think you're onto something here because in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, it says this: For ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through his workmanship, all of his creation, the wonderful things that he has made, so that they are. So that they who fail to believe and trust in him are without excuse and without defense. So we're told if we want to learn something about God, we can look to nature. I look
Yes.
at it this way: is if you were a carpenter and you built a table, when you got through building it, your fingerprints would be all over it. So if
Yeah.
God is the author of creation and he spoke the universe into existence, his fingerprints are going to be all over it. So I really do believe that you're on something. I mean, I haven't heard any of this preached from the pulpit before, but I think it's an interesting take that you can look to nature and say, I see divine attributes there. I see divine nature within the creation. It's a pretty interesting concept, I think.
I mean, I completely agree with you. And if we even look even deeper into scripture, I mean, if you remember what Jesus would do when he would want to really get closer and commune with God, and the scripture says that he would go into the wilderness by himself.
Right?
He literally would go into nature, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's absolutely unbelievable. And I've learned so much. What I usually do is I don't just go just science. I take the science, I look at like nature. I do a lot of, critical thinking. I ask a lot of
Hmm.
questions, and I make sure that it comes from all angles, including ancient scripture. And that when it all lines up from all these different angles and the truth just seems to be absolute, that's how I actually was looking for
Yeah.
the answers that I was
Yeah.
seeking.
That's a great approach. Here's another thing I wanted to ask you about. I know
Sure.
that hydrogen is a powerful antioxidant, and antioxidants are useful for protection against EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, like cell phone radiation and those types of things. So, can you talk a little bit, say a few words on how hydrogen can be protective against EMF?
Well, it's actually one of the very first observations I made when I was reading the research on hydrogen is how protective it appears to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason that I named my channel. One of the reasons I named it Uprising 144K. The 144K, I'm sure you know, is the 12 tribes of 12,000, in Revelations and this whole bit.
Yes.
And they were dressed in white and all this, which in my opinion symbolizes light, which the light comes from, again, hydrogen. And I also think it symbolizes purity. And same thing. Hydrogen is extremely pure. It's absolutely amazing. Of course, if it's made properly without byproducts, that's kind of the big issue these days, people making it wrong. Um, and so I noticed that it offered a lot of protection. And if anybody were to see, for example, my video number 8, I literally show cells that are being exposed to radiation. So EMF is like a type of radiation.
Right.
And you could see how the cells are being affected. And then they would do the exact same test, except they would have hydrogen, on the other side of the coin here. And you could see how protected the cells were from the hydrogen was literally protecting them, like big time. We're talking the radiation was causing 90% cellular damage without the hydrogen. And we had hydrogen, it was only like 10%. So think about a car that would be 90% rusted, which is pretty much be a rust bucket. You could probably not even drive it. Or a car that just has 10% rust. Like, okay, it's got a little bit, but you can still totally drive it. Yeah. It's a dramatic difference. And so in my opinion, not obviously a medical claim, but in my opinion, based on what I've seen, hydrogen appears to be extremely protective. And I literally felt it in my spirit when I read the scientific paper, which is I just felt like it's almost like a guardian angel that is around you and protects you from basically many different things. And I feel like we need that more than ever these days, whether it's, chemtrails or even just pollution in the air, pollution in the water, pollution in our food, pollution, toxic stuff everywhere. I feel like we need God's protection now more than ever.
Well, that's why I asked you about the EMF, because it's pretty much everywhere. You cannot escape it, right? Avoidance is the best thing, but that ship sailed a long time ago. We're not going to be able to avoid electromagnetic frequencies when we live our daily lives. You go into the grocery store, there's Wi-Fi there. You go to a restaurant, there's Wi-Fi there. People are talking on their phones nearby you. That stuff's is flying through your head and brain while you're sitting there eating dinner. So the answer here is we need to find some way to protect ourselves. Now, I want to get back to your video number 8 you just referenced. Now, you were talking about in that video about a chemotherapy drug. I think it was called Displatin. Is that right?
That was not that video, but there was another video that I did. So this is another to show you how amazing and powerful hydrogen is at protecting us. Cisplatin is a drug that is used for cancer, for like tumors. Doctors usually never use cisplatin because it is so terrible for you that it literally will just destroy your kidneys. And so now you go into the doctor for cancer, and now all of a sudden you need a kidney transplant on top of whatever it is you're going through. I mean, this is horrendous. And so they did a study where they literally showed that it appears that you could use cisplatin as long as you used hydrogen, and that you could pretty much walk out with your original kidneys intact. That's how powerful, this stuff
amazing.
Yeah, I think it's
just
remarkable.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. So can you think of any other really entertaining or important uses of hydrogen?
Well, I think there's numerous uses. I mean, as far as for health, so if we think about this, I feel like you're literally taking in light. I mean, that's what hydrogen, you're taking in light, you're taking something, in my opinion, sacred. In fact, it goes past the blood-brain barrier on top of this. So into the brain, into the pineal gland. I think that it just goes absolutely everywhere. It's remarkable how it also affects the eyes. I was really surprised about this. So like people's vision started improving. I got testimonials on people with macular degeneration, which is supposed to be completely untreatable, by the way. Even my own father who, had glaucoma, that was a pretty big deal because his glaucoma mysteriously disappeared after using hydrogen for years. And wow. Hydrogen, if you do it a certain way, it can be pretty easy, like a lifestyle. You literally can just drink the water where you dissolve the hydrogen in it. And of course, you can also inhale the gas. I recommend doing both. That's ultimately what I have found to be best. But I also think, this is how crazy this is going to sound. Remember I told you that in the Hidden Messages in Water, Masaru Emoto said, water has memory. That's what it appears that he uncovered. Well, I believe now that hydrogen has memory. I believe that since it was the beginning, the beginning of creation, very first thing on the periodic table, I think it carries a code almost within it. And the more that I have used it, I get the craziest things that come to me. Things, in meditation and just, I can't even believe that this stuff comes to me. But basically, I get these crazy ideas on how to use hydrogen in ways that we've never even imagined, like growing food. Like there's these methods, and I'm not sure they're in my mind, and one day I'll put them into practice. But it appears that it will absolutely make food incredible. I can give you one example already that I already do. In Japan, they would take like a food, like an apple, and they could test the antioxidants in the apple to see how strong, it is. Then they would put this fruit or vegetable, or in this case, an apple, into hydrogen water and let it soak there for like 20 minutes. Then they would take it out and retest the apple. That level of antioxidants in that apple were off the charts. So it had literally transformed the food. And
Wow.
and I kind of starting to believe that maybe it's possible that the Garden of Eden, that somehow the food there was different. It's not what we're eating today. We don't grow it. Like, I don't feel like we respect the food as much as we should. I mean, because who gave us all this food? God gave us these seeds. This is all from nature.
Right.
And we spray chemicals on it. We do the most ridiculous things to our food. And we put so much money into like military, for example, which is fine and all, but I don't think we put enough into agriculture. I feel like we don't hold it to high importance, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we should. And I believe that hydrogen will literally transform the world of agriculture, actually. I also think it'll transform the world of energy. It's a very, very clean energy, very sustainable. And then, of course, I do think it'll change the world of athletics. And then, of course, just the world of health and medicine. So I just think there's tons of uses. There's even, I'm not sure if we're allowed to say it on this show. There is a word, I'll just say it starts with Ivor and ends with like.
Okay. Yeah, you say no more. That's enough.
Say no more. Okay. Right. So maybe you can cut it out. I'll just say Ivor. But the reason I can't give you the whole history on it because what I can tell you is that they actually use hydrogen in the process of it used to be it was something that was different before. And it was actually a Japanese gentleman that transformed that medicine with hydrogen, actually. And it became what is now known today as the word that I won't say. But so I think that hydrogen can affect so many things, world of medicine, like I said, athletics, and even other stuff in the future. I believe that it's even possible that it could be how would I say this? There's certain ways to use it that I think will be able to make us live an extremely long lives, the way that I believe that we're supposed to, even according to Scripture.
Yeah, well, yeah. In the ancient scriptures, people lived for hundreds of years, and then after the flood, after the Great Flood, things shifted. Something happened there. Don't know exactly what, but there was a shift, a major shift that went on.
And I even have information about that, which I probably won't go into today. But it's funny that you actually hit on it when nobody else does. But it's a huge part of our longevity, and it literally happened exactly at that moment. And I believe I know why, actually. So I do think I have the answer to that question now.
Go for it.
Well, the only reason that I can't share too much about it, as crazy as it may sound, is because the thing that I observed that had to do with that day most likely is going to be used to develop a technology. And there was, unfortunately, a lawyer. As usual, lawyers get involved. But this guy's a very kind lawyer, has translated scripture. He's, very spiritual. And when I shared with him the answer, he said, "This is so unbelievable." He said, "First of all, you can't say anything at this time because this will be taken from you." And he said, "You're probably going to want it." For me, it's something that I want to use that knowledge to develop to actually help us not only live longer and have better health. He had me speak with a UCLA scientist, actually, who is also a doctor. He wanted me to tell him my hypothesis, and I had a lot of scientific evidence to prove my hypothesis. And at first it sounded crazy because I actually think that this device that I'm imagining that has to do a lot, believe it or not, with the Great Flood, could prolong our lives hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, if not even over 1,000 years. And so we just, according to that UCLA scientist, he said, you just need funding because it's probably going to take at least $30 million to develop this piece of equipment. And then you need specialists to run it and, the whole bit. But
that is intriguing. It really is. So I want to talk about how you make hydrogen at your home, the device that you use and how to use it. But before we go there, I want to talk about why is it that Japan is so far ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to this research?
The Japanese, in my opinion, are quite remarkable people. I see the beauty in all people. I feel like everybody has their strengths. But one thing I've observed about the Japanese is, man, they want perfection. There's almost like a cultural thing where they say the endless pursuit of perfection. They just don't quit. And they're so good at looking at these tiny little details. And the one thing that I observed about Japan a long time ago was that there's one thing that they value more than money. And most places I've noticed, like, money is number one everywhere. People just sell out. The Japanese what they value above all is honor. They have to, live honorably and be honorable people. And you can see again, even from the book, The Hidden Messages of Water, this Japanese guy, I mean, who would have figured this out? They think outside the box and they
Yeah.
really value health. There's a reason they live as long as they do. It's not just a coincidence. The deeper you look into their culture, there's so much beauty and wisdom. And so anyway, I think that the reason that they're just light years ahead of everybody is because of them valuing health. In fact, most of the research that I find as far as medical research and scientific research of really interesting things where we get to even learn about the human body comes from Japan. It's not like I'm going to Japan trying to find this stuff. I look for it with no bias, but it always ends up leading to Japan, and they're just so far ahead of us. There was some recent stuff that they discovered that I won't go into detail. All I'll tell you is that what it does is, to me, it reveals more about the human body, which this is the temple of God we're talking about here. I mean, God created this body. And so if we can find new ways to learn more about it, we're learning more, like you said, the fingerprints that he left upon it. And so I always love reading their research, and I just keep finding more and more stuff all the time. And some of it I was even actually ahead of them because I was using hydrogen for certain things that even they hadn't proven yet, which now they have. So like my father's glaucoma was one of them. There was no real research when he was actually the very first person pretty much known, where at his age especially, that his glaucoma just went away. But now in Japan, they're showing evidence that hydrogen appears to be really good for different eye conditions like that. So
That's
on and
amazing.
on it goes.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, I'm sure you've probably used several different hydrogen devices before. And I know there's one that you like by far is the best.
Yes.
So could you tell us about that? What's it called and what does it look like? How to use it? All that.
So it's called the Lourdes Hydrofix Premium. So they literally appears to have named it after Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, from the holy
Yes.
waters of Lourdes. I mean, their own
Uh-huh.
website's called Holy Hydrogen, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the device, so I didn't look for a specific device. I looked for the scientific evidence as far as when they were doing hydrogen studies, and I would look for a device that did everything that the studies were showing. That's what I was really looking for. Because, what you're going to find mostly in the world of hydrogen, like, for example, people literally sell hydrogen pills out there, which I'll say right now, I am not a fan of. And I'm not a fan of because of what I've seen in lab studies, what's in them. I can't even believe that they sell them to people. The other thing that you'll see out there is,
let me interrupt you there, Greg. Is it just the toxic ingredients that are in that tablet, or is there something inherently wrong with doing it that way? He's talking about just dropping a tablet in a glass of water and letting it fizzle out like an Alka-Seltzer.
yeah. So for example, I can give you some examples. Hydrogen is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Okay. When you drop those pills in the water, changes the color of the water. It turns gray like metal. It's no longer tasteless. It literally tastes like metal. And on top of it all, hydrogen is pH neutral too. And it turns the water very acidic. It just doesn't really seem to follow in line with anything that hydrogen is really showing us, other than it has a chemical reaction that produces hydrogen.
Okay.
But, like real medical professionals, like there's a gentleman in Japan who's an actual practicing doctor, super smart, a neurosurgeon, hydrogen specialist, and he doesn't recommend those at all. In fact, the machine that he uses is the same one that I use. So we both came to the same conclusion. And so this most equipment is actually made in China. And if it's not made in China, I discovered through deep research that the parts are basically made in China, and they'll ship them to different places in the world, like Canada or Taiwan or somewhere, put everything together there so they can claim that it's not from China. People just hate to hear the stuff's from China. And I don't blame them, because the parts, when you're making hydrogen, is the metal technology is extremely important. The computer that it uses, the membrane that it uses, all these little parts are super important to making it clean. And it's important to understand medical grade, right? The simplest example I could give you is, if you go to a hospital, they have oxygen tanks, right?
Right.
And the oxygen in a hospital, do you think it's the same as the oxygen tank that when you see like some welding center somewhere where they're doing welding?
No way.
It's not the same. And do you know ultimately what the difference is between those two oxygens?
I couldn't tell you.
It's literally just purity. So it's like the difference between having the cleanest water in the world and like tap water. Which one do you want to drink, right? And so with medical gases, high purity is of extreme importance, and almost nobody talks about it. It's one of the few things that I do talk about. So this particular neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, he uses the same device I do because of the purity, the high level of purity at which it makes the hydrogen. And I mean, hydrogen will go past the blood-brain barrier. So you want something really pure. You don't want something that's going to be detrimental to your body or your health.
Right.
And
Right.
so he literally says it's the only device he recommends to his patients. It's the only one he'll use. It is 100% engineered in Japan. It is completely hand built in Japan. They made all the parts in house, even though the gentleman who was on this project, apparently it was going to be very expensive. You know, he could have outsourced to China. And I found out that he's like, nope, everything's going to be done here in Japan because I want to make sure everything's done right. I don't want the Chinese to screw this machine up. I want it to be the best in the world. And he did it apparently for his daughter. His daughter was born very sad with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And they had told him that she'd be lucky to make it to the age of 5. And so he knew that hydrogen would help based on a lot of the data. So here he got help from a lot of industries, by the way, like Toyota, G-Shock, and Yamaha, and like big time, companies in Japan that put their hand in to help him develop this amazing machine that is like super affordable. Obviously, it's not like $30,000 or $100,000 to make medical grade hydrogen. And so that was kind of part of the story, how it was developed. And then, of course, they get lab tested the machines. Nobody lab tests every single machine. They're the only company in the world who does it. So there's a reason that I love this company, and I love that they made this device, and it absolutely changed my life for people.
Well, I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes to get some more information if someone wants to pick up one of those devices. So,
Yeah.
How do you use it? Do you just simply put hydrogen in your drinking water and drink it throughout the day, or what's the dosing look like? How do you actually ingest it?
All right. So the way that the machine does it, in my opinion, there's two really important ways. There's numerous ways you can get hydrogen in you. I mean, you can literally do IVs, you can inhale the gas, drink the water, things like this, because you're literally using water as a carrier for the gas. Kind of like think of sparkling water or soda pop, as CO2 is dissolved in that water. In this case, we're dissolving molecular hydrogen. Now, the beautiful thing is that the Japanese also made this machine extremely simple to use. It's one button. It's literally one button. And we're talking about something quite complex. So they simplified it for us. And you just run the machine. You put the amount of water that you're going to want to drink. The machine does a maximum of 1.5 liters. And you just hit the button and it will fully saturate the highest quality molecular hydrogen you can get. The nanobubbles are so good. The purity is so high. It actually double structures the hydrogen. And their latest technology, which is so unbelievable, I haven't even done a video about it yet. They're calling it sticky hydrogen. Nobody's ever made sticky hydrogen. These guys are, again, light years above everybody and ahead of everybody in the technology. And so that's ultimately how it does it. And then you just drink the water. What I personally developed was, one, how to have the cleanest water. Because if you're going to use water as a carrier, in my opinion, you're going to want the cleanest water. If you look at lab tests of what's in water, and I have some right here, I mean, it's horrendous what's in our water. It's no wonder we get sick. Just the stuff in our water is like unbelievable. So I've also learned every single filtration modality in existence and what's the best way to go. And people want to see the best way to go. I mean, you could probably put in the link, but it's called mypurewater.com is the website. And it's funny that they put the word pure because they do have the highest purity. And so it's pretty amazing. And if people do want a discount, I mean, they're welcome to use the code, which is the same name as my YouTube channel. And it does help support the channel, but that's not really the whole important part of it. The important part is that I did a lot of research to find the best way to clean your water. And this stuff just cleans your water to the absolute max.
So do you have to have a separate water filtration device, or does this hydrogen device actually filter the water for you?
You're going to need a separate device. So the hydrogen machine literally just does two things at an extremely high level. It makes the hydrogen water and it makes hydrogen gas that you can inhale. And that's all it does. So you put any water you want into the device.
Okay. And does it structure the water?
That's what's getting interesting. They found a way, nobody does this, it actually structures the hydrogen. So it's literally structuring what the water is made of, because water is made of the hydrogen. So it's actually double structuring it. And like I said, they eventually produced, and I don't know if it's due to the structurization, actually, I think it's part of it, where they did something that was deemed impossible, this sticky hydrogen thing that nobody ever thought would ever be possible. It's doing it. And I'm going to be releasing some laboratory footage because even the Japanese thought they made a mistake with the measuring equipment because they're like, this is not possible. It should not, what we're doing breaks almost the laws of science. And so I'll be talking about more of that in the future in some videos and showing the footage.
Okay. All right. Real good. So how much water do you have to drink in a day to see some results?
So It's obviously going to vary depending on the condition that one is going through. So I have different protocols. If I were to just give you like an average number, I would say that you'd want to drink probably at least 1 to 1.5 liters of this water throughout the whole day. Depending on if you're going through something really severe, this is not medical advice or any medical claim, but if you're going through something more severe, I would step it up to 2.5 liters, maybe even as much as 3 liters for the whole day. I usually, for me personally, what I'll do is I'll drink the water on an empty stomach. So between half a liter minimum, 1 liter maximum, and I'll drink the water empty stomach 20 to 30 minutes before meals. And so
Okay.
that's one way of how I use it.
Can you overdose on it?
So you can't really overdose on hydrogen. It's like good luck overdosing on hydrogen. But like water, I mean, if you drink, again, 2 gallons of water in a 1 hour period, it can literally kill you. And so the same would go for hydrogen water. I'll give you the quick science. You don't want to drink typically over 1 liter in 1 hour because anything over 1 liter in 1 hour, and this is just water, so same thing goes for hydrogen water, it begins to put a strain on the kidneys.
Yes.
So that's why I only drink 1 liter before, meals. And when I do that before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it comes out to 3 liters a day. So it works out perfectly.
So does hydrogen work as a detoxifying agent? Does it help you detoxify?
It does appear to do that, actually. Our body naturally is detoxifying, and it appears to activate certain parts of our own body that actually help us be able to detoxify. It even activates almost like certain enzymes that have certain functions basically that help us detox. It activates so many things in the body, which is really weird too, because like if you inhale the gas, there's certain benefits. But when you drink the water, scientists originally thought that you would get greater benefit from inhaling the gas because you get way more of it. But what they first originally discovered is that it was actually the opposite. The water appeared to have more benefit, which was kind of weird. And I
I,
actually created.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
it's because the water's a carrier.
that's what I'm also thinking. I have numerous theories as to why this happens, but what I can also tell you is that what I did is I developed a protocol where I would drink the water first, and then I would inhale the gas. And I came up with this. And the moment I released it, because a lot of people do watch my channel and troll it for information. And mysteriously, after I released my protocol, about 2 to 3 months later, somebody literally did a scientific study on exactly my method. I know my method, because I created it. And they did 2 studies proving that my method worked better than any other method ever. So that was the best way to get the benefits of
Okay.
hydrogen.
All right.
So
What
far, so far.
about
I got other
what?
methods.
I'm thinking another way that might be useful. Tell me what your thoughts are, and
Yes.
that is making coffee with enema coffee and doing a coffee enema with it.
Absolutely. I don't even think you need to even do coffee. You could just literally do hydrogen water and
Okay.
and I have definitely thought about that.
Mhm.
I even want to do really, really, see, this is one of the things where I'm going to need a lot of funding. I want to create giant tanks of water, of hydrogen water. That's about what I can say. I can't give too much detail, but that would be another way of implementing it. Because when the body goes in the water, I even think it has a lot to do with baptism, actually. Because when the body goes in the water, you literally become one with water. That's why if you run electricity through water and you're standing in it, it's going to go right through you too.
You feel it.
You know, and if
Yeah.
anybody knows about osmosis, where is if you get in water, depending on your mineral content with your body in relationship to the water, literally you'll start having osmosis where the minerals either go in and out right through your tissues. So there's like a homeostasis that begins to happen with the water. So it all
Uh-huh.
becomes very, very interesting, fascinating. And I haven't seen too many people do this research, but I'm very, I have my own hypothesis of how this could all work.
So I think what you're alluding to is a device that could make a bathtub full of it and just take a bath in it. Is that what you're talking about?
It would go way beyond that because a bathtub wouldn't be enough. There is equipment already, and I looked into it. So there's equipment that you can put in bathtubs to produce hydrogen. The only
Mhm.
problem is that you're not going to fully saturate that water with one of these devices because there's so much water in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Um, with the machine that we're talking about, it literally does a maximum of 1.5 liters, and it takes half an hour to fully saturate 1.5 liters. Imagine a giant bathtub. I don't think it'd be possible. And when the water's hot, which I only assume in the tub, we're going to want the water warm or hot, it
Right.
makes it even harder now because the hydrogen leaves even quicker when the
Okay.
water's hot as compared to cold. Though cold plunges, that would be a thing to look into. So, but I definitely want to someday I hope to get funding and do something really amazing with this knowledge.
Okay, very good. All right, we've got to wrap things up here. We're running out of
Okay.
time, but I've got one. I got one more question for you, Greg. You've been great. You're so knowledgeable. But here's a question I like to ask most of my guests, and that is, you are pretty far along in your health and wellness journey. What
Yeah.
do you know today that you wish you knew when you first got started?
Well, gosh, first of all, I just wish that I would have known about how dirty our water is. So just having clean water and just hydrogen, just that would be so transformative because I've literally known people who don't have the best of diet, and I don't recommend having a bad diet, but I've known people with medical conditions like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, arthritis, different eye conditions, even heart conditions like the one I had, and gut issues, people with IBS and Crohn's, and I mean, all these issues. I've had people where they literally don't even change their diet, which I don't recommend. I recommend changing your diet and treating your body better, and they would use something like clean water and hydrogen, and the results are literally hard to believe. These conditions, disappearing. And I think that you would get even greater results, obviously, because I did, changing diet on top of it all. Now you're like really supercharging it. So I just wish that I would have known that, and I wish I would have known how much harm a lot of these foods do to us, because I believe that I did a lot of damage to myself. I never valued the temple, the body. I never valued health, because when you're young and you're dumb and you have your health and you think everything's going to be fine. And then I suffered like no other, I really did. And
Mm.
so this really transformed my life. And I appreciate you having me on to share this message. I really sincerely hope it helps people out there so that they can have greater health. I believe very strongly that if you have greater health, it's much easier for you to be kinder to others and happier. Because when you have terrible health and you're in pain and you don't feel good, you don't tend to have much patience for others. And it's very hard for you to be kind to others when you're dragging and you
Absolutely.
just don't feel good. So I really hope this brings more love into the world, actually.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing that. So, if someone wants to connect with you, expose themselves to more of your work, what would they do?
So on YouTube, I created the channel Uprising 144K, and everything is absolutely free. So if people just want to even just support, they feel called to support what it is that I'm doing, subscribe to the channel. It's free. Share it with other people who you think might need it or who just want to support what I'm doing also by subscribing, again, totally free. And then you can also find me like on Instagram and on Twitter, or otherwise known as X now or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't do a lot of stuff there, and on Rumble. The majority of what I do is on YouTube. But people also, I don't like to do full consults anymore because it is so time consuming, but it's hard for me to not be there for people who need it. So if people really need my help and want a consult, they can email me actually at uprising144k@gmail.com. Always include your name and phone number. I literally do my best to reach out to everybody. And so that's how people would, either get a hold of me or try to support what it is that I'm doing.
That's awesome. Really good. Thank you, Greg, for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with the Natural Nation.
Thank you so much, Dave.
And don't forget, I need your help creating some episodes. I'm looking for people to come on the show with me and do a lifestyle audit. You tell me what your pain point is, and I'll give you my feedback and get you one step closer to experiencing all the health and vitality you're capable of. There's no charge for this. I enjoy interacting with the Natural Nation. It won't be live, so no pressure there. And an added bonus is you'll get a behind-the-scenes look at the Christian Healthy Lifestyle Studio. For a limited time, I'll send you a copy of my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health, as a thank you. Go to my website, christianhealthylifestyle.com/audit, answer a few questions, and you'll be good to go. I look forward to hearing from you. For more, go to the show notes page at christianhealthylifestyle.com/150. There you can find links to all the resources that we mentioned, as well as a whole lot more. Be sure to tune into the next episode. I'm going to be talking with Dr. Morgan Nolte. She is an expert on insulin resistance, and she's got a lot of wisdom to share, so don't miss that one. That's it for now. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. I'll talk with you next time. Be blessed.